Hello students, welcome to the lecture on the hotel's liabilities. And after this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand the definition of bailment, explain the duties and rights of bailor and bailee, define the finder of lost goods, explain the liability under a bailment relationship, understand the maintenance of records regarding guests. Let's start with a brief introduction to the hotel's liabilities. The hotels were completely liable for any damage, loss or theft of a guest as personal property. Today, however, most states have placed limits on a hotel's liability as long as it follows certain regulations. The hotel must inform guests that the safe is available for their use, that the hotel has limited liability for any items left in the safe, and that the hotel may not be responsible if the guest chooses not to keep his valuables in the safe. Sometimes, hotels attempt to disclaim their liability completely with posted notices such as management is not responsible for any loss suffered by guests or their belongings. In these situations, the hotel is attempting to gain more protection than is allowed generally under state laws. As a result, the hotel may lose any liability protection offered under state law and be held liable for the full amount of the guest loss or injury. Let us now discuss the definitions of bailment. Transfer of personal property by one party, the bailor, in the possession but not ownership of another party, the bailee, for a particular purpose. Such transfer is made under an express or implied contract called bailment contract or contract of bailment, that the property will be re-delivered to the bailor on completion of that purpose, provided the bailee has no liens on the goods, such as for non-payment of his charges. Bailment law and legal definition. A bailment is the act of placing property in the custody and control of another, usually by agreement in which the holder, bailee, is responsible for the safekeeping and return of the property.
Hey, my darling Maya.
Hey, my sweetheart Ori.
I know that we have come here for a date but want to clarify what exactly is contract of bailment.
Aurelius. I can't believe you are asking this to me on a date.
I know exactly how you feel, but I really need to know cause I have a presentation on contract of bailment tomorrow and Suman ma'am has told us that we should know the topic.
Okay, fine. In bailment, the deliverer of the asset is the bailor and the receiver is the bailee. In a bailment transaction, ownership is never transferred, and the bailor is not entitled to use the property while it's in possession of the bailee. Bailment is a legal relationship between two parties, whereby the owner retains full rights to the assets or property but he possesses the property.
So it means if a person already in possession of the goods of another contracts to hold them as bailee, he thereby becomes the bailee, and the owner becomes the bailor of such goods, although they may not have been delivered by way of bailment. Am I right, Maya darling?
There are different types of bailments. Bailments for hire, in which the custodian bailee is paid. Constructive bailment, when the circumstances create an obligation upon the custodian to protect the goods, and gratuitous bailment, in which there is no payment but the bailee is still responsible. Actual bailment. A bailment created by the actual or constructive delivery of personal property to a bailee or his agent. Bailment for hire. A bailment in which the bailor merely takes possession of personal property in exchange for compensation. Bailment for mutual benefit. A bailment in which the bailee in exchange for compensation provides the bailor with some additional benefit as to the bailor's personal property, such as cleaning or repair work. Constructive bailment. A bailment in which, due to the particular circumstances, the bailee has a legal obligation to return the personal property to its owner, even if the owner is not the bailor or if the bailee did not voluntarily take possession of the property. Gratuitous bailment. A bailment in which the bailee accepts personal property without expecting the compensation. For example, a gratuitous bailment is created when a bailee borrows the bailor's property. In gratuitous bailments, the bailee is liable to the bailor for the loss of or damage to property only if it was caused by the bailie's gross negligence. Involuntary bailment. A bailment in which the bailier, without any negligence, unavoidably or accidentally leaves personal property on the bailie's person or land. If the bailie refuses to return the property upon the bailier's demand or refuses to permit the bailier to remove the property, he can be liable for conversion. See also property. Categories. There are three types of bailments. Number 1, for the benefit of the bailier and bailee. Number 2, for the sole benefit of the bailier. And number 3, for the sole benefit of the bailee. Elements. 3 elements are generally necessary for the existence of a bailment. They are delivery, acceptance, and consideration. Actual possession of or control over property must be delivered to a bailee in order to create a bailment. The delivery of actual possession of an item allows the bailee to accomplish his or her duties toward the property without the interference of others. A requisite to the creation of a bailment is the express or implied acceptance of possession of or control over the property by the bailee. A person cannot unwittingly become a bailee because a bailment is a contract. Knowledge and acceptance of its terms are essential to its enforcement. Consideration. The exchange of something of value must be present for a bailment to exist. Unlike the consideration required for most contracts, as long as one party gives up something of value, such action is regarded as good consideration. Rights and liabilities. The bailment contract embodying general principles of the law of bailments governs the rights and duties of the bailier and bailee. The duty of care that must be exercised by a bailee varies depending on the type of bailment. In a bailment for mutual benefit, the bailee must take reasonable care of the bailed property. A bailee who fails to do so may be held liable for any damages incurred from his or her negligence. The provisions of the bailment contract may restrict the liability of a bailee for negligent care of unauthorized use of the property. Such terms may not, however, absolve the bailee from all liability for the consequences of his or her own fraud or negligence. Termination. A bailment is ended when its purpose has been achieved, when the parties agree that it is terminated, or when the bail property is destroyed. A bailment created for an indefinite period is terminable at will by either party as long as the other party received due notice of the intended termination.
A bailment is not the same as a sale, which is an intentional transfer of ownership of personal property in exchange for something. A bailment involves only a transfer of possession or custody, not of ownership. 3 elements are generally necessary for the existence of a bailment: delivery of the property, acceptance of the same, and consideration for the contract made.
There are 6 types of bailment, right? Bailment for carriage, bailment for repairs, bailment for safe custody, bailment for hire, bailment for pledge, bailment without consideration.
Oh yes. You know something about bailment.
Thanks to ma'am, I tell you. It's only because of her I know this. I even know the sections of termination of contract of bailment. Section 153, 159 and 162 of ICA 1872.
That's completely right.
Let us now discuss the duties and rights of bailier and bailee. Rights of bailier. Rights of taking back the goods bailed. The bailier has rights to take back the goods bailed as soon as the purpose of bailment is completed. If the bailee defaults in so returning, the bailier has right to receive compensation. Right in case of unauthorized use of goods. The bailier is entitled to terminate the contract of bailment if the bailee makes the unauthorized use of the goods bail. Right to goods bail before stated period. The bailier may get back his goods before the time stated in the contract of bailment with the consent of the bailee. Right to dissolution of contract. The bailier may dissolve the contract if the conditions of bailment are disobeyed by the bailee. Right to gratuitous goods. The bailier has right it terminates the contract of gratuitous bailment at any time, even before the specified time, subject to the limitation that was such as termination of bailment causes loss in excess of benefit. The bailier must compensate the bailee. Right in share of profit. The bailor has share in the increase or profit gained from the goods bailed if there is provision in the contract. Right of bailee. Right to recover damages, right to receive compensation. A bailee is entitled to receive compensation from the bailor for any loss resulting from the defect in the bailor's title. Right of legal action. A bailee may take necessary legal action against the person who wrongfully deprives him of the use of goods bailed or does them any injury. Right to recover bailment expenses. Bailee is entitled to be reimbursed for all legitimate expenses incurred for any purpose of bailment. Right of lien. Where the bailee has rendered any service for the purpose of bailment, he has a right to retain such goods bailed until he receives due remuneration for his services in absence of contract to the contrary. Right of indemnity. The bailee has right to receive the amount of indemnity from bailor for any loss which he may sustain by reason that the bailor was not entitled to make the bailment or to receive back the goods or to give directions respecting them. Duties and liabilities of bailor. To disclose facts. The important duty of the bailor is to disclose the faults in the goods bailed insofar as they are known to him, and if he fails to do that, he will be liable to pay such damages to the bailee as may have resulted directly from the faults. Illustration. Payment of extraordinary expenses. It provides that all the necessary expenses incurred by the bailee in connection with the bailment must be paid by the bailor. To indemnity bailee. The bailor is bound to pay the bailee for any loss which the bailee may sustain by reason that the bailor was not entitled to make the bailment. Warning to the bailee. When the things are in danger, that is explosive goods, the bailor must give extraordinary warning to the bailee. Duties and responsibilities of bailee. To take care of goods bailed. The bailee is bound to take as much care of the goods entrusted to him as a man of ordinary prudence. To avoid the inconsistent act. A contract of bailment is voidable at the option of the bailor. If the bailee does any act with regard to the goods bailed inconsistent with the conditions of the bailment. The authorized use of goods. Not to mix bailor's goods. The bailee is bound to keep the goods of the bailor separate from his own. Where the mixture without the consent of the bailor is inseparable, the bailor is entitled to be compensated by the bailee for the loss of the goods. To return the goods. It is the duty of the bailee to return or deliver the goods bailed accordingly to the bailor's direction. Responsibility in case of default. If the goods are not returned, delivered or tendered due to default of the bailee, he is responsible to the bailor for any loss of the goods from that time. To return any profit from the goods. The bailee is bound to deliver to the bailor or according to his direction any increase or profit which may have occurred from the goods bailed. Not to set up adverse title. The bailee has no right to deny the bailor's title or set up against the bailor's his own title or the right of a third party. Let us now discuss another topic, finder of lost goods. A person who finds goods belonging to another and takes them into his custody is subject to the responsibility of taking due care of them and trying to find out the real owner of the goods. It is also to be remembered that the finder has a good title over the things found and that his right is enforceable against all except the real owner. Rights of finder of goods. Right to receive compensation. Right of lien. He can exercise his right of lien and may retain the goods until he receives the expenses incurred in preserving the property or for finding out the true owner. Right to sue. He can file a suit against the owner for any reward that might have been offered to give him. Right to legal action. Right of selling. The finder has a right to sell the things of another found by him under the circumstances given. The thing found is commonly the subject of sale. The owner cannot be found with reasonable diligence. The owner refuses to pay the lawful charges. The thing is in danger of perishing or losing the greater part of its value, or the lawful charges amount to 2/3 of its value. Duties of finder of goods. The duties of finder of goods are given: finding out the real owner, care to be taken by the finder, returning of goods. Let us now discuss about liability under a bailment relationship. A hospitality facility is liable only if a bailment relationship is established. For example, many restaurants and hotels provide coat racks or unattended courtrooms for their guests. Generally, a restaurant would not be responsible for any theft or damage to a patron's property on an unattended coat rack because the restaurant did not legally take possession of the property. It is important to remember that in cases where a bailment relationship does not exist and a hospitality operation does not assume liability, managers should still exercise a degree of care over their guests' property to avoid the risk of a negligence lawsuit. A hotel may also be liable for any bailed property of no guest using its facilities, such as a hotel guest who has already checked out or an individual using a hotel restaurant or a meeting room. Let us now discuss records regarding guests. An account may be imagined as a bin or container in which the various results of business transactions are stored. The increases and decreases in an account are calculated and the resulting monetary amount is called as account balance. Any financial transaction that occurs in the hotel may affect several accounts. Front office accounts are record-keeping devices to store information about guests and non-guest financial transactions. The simplest form of writing an account is the T form. Types of accounts at the front desk. Guest accounts. A guest account is a record of financial transactions which occur between a guest and the hotel. Guest accounts are created when guests guarantee their reservation or when they register at the front desk. Non-guest accounts. A hotel may extend in-house charge privileges to local businesses or agencies as a means of promotion or to group sponsoring meetings at the hotel. Basic principles of accounting. Any amount paid by the guest to the hotel is posted in the debit column. A debit, DR, therefore is monies owned by the guest to the hotel. Any money received from the guest is posted in the credit column. A credit, therefore, is any money paid by the guest towards settling his or her bill, including advance deposit. The balance column reflects a progressive difference between debits and credits calculated on basis of the formula previous balance plus debits minus credits is equal to net outstanding balance. Points to remember with regard to a folio. A folio is raised as soon as the guest checks in. The initial outstanding balance when it is opened of the folio is 0. Details on a folio: guest name, room number, date of arrival, date of departure, room rate, address, billing instruction. Each folio has a serial number which will help keep a control on folios for the purpose of audit. The cashier is responsible for the guest folio till the guest departs. Types of folios used in hotels. Individual guest account card or folio. To record transactions made by individual or independent guests with the hotel, also called as guest folio, group folio or master folio. One folio for the whole group, and this folio is required to record all transactions made by the group which are part of the package of the group. Semi-permanent or non-guest folios. In this folio, the credit financial transaction made by non-resident guests with the hotel are recorded, also known as city account card or non-resident guest account card. Employee folio. All the financial transactions, if any, made by the employees are recorded. Permanent or companies or airlines folio. Separate folios are maintained for all companies, agencies, organizations with whom the hotel has permanent billing arrangements. Split folios. Split folios are those when two guests wish to have separate accounts though they share the same room. Room charges will feature on one folio for convenience, other charges will reflect individually in split folios. Hotel record information. The name and address of the registering guest and the total number of guests occupying a room. The day, month, year and time of arrival of a guest or group of guests. The number, letter or other symbol identifying the room rented or assigned to a guest or groups of guests. The date that a guest or group of guests is scheduled to depart, the rate, charge and amount collected for rental of the room or rooms assigned to a guest or group of guests. the method of payment for the room, the make, type and license number of a guest vehicle if the vehicle is to be parked or placed on the hotel premises, the name of the operator checking in a guest or group of guests, the identification information required by renting of hotel rooms, such other information as the city manager may from time to time specify. Maintenance of records. Guest register shall be kept on the hotel premises in the guest reception or guest check-in area or in an office adjacent to or nearby that area. Operators shall retain guest registers and other guest records including but not limited to the information specified for a period of none less than 2 years from the date of the last entry in the register or record. No person shall alter, deface or erase a record so as to make the information recorded therein illegible, unintelligible or inaccurate. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. There is a lower standard of care imposed upon the bailee in a gratuitous bailment, and the parties may contract to hold the bailee free from liability in any bailment. A bailment is not the same as a sale, which is an intentional transfer of ownership of personal property in exchange for something of value. Once the purpose of the bailment has been completed, the bailee usually must return the property to the bailor or account for it. Depending upon the terms of the contract, a person who finds goods belonging to another and takes them into his custody is subject to the same responsibility as a bailee. It is important to remember that in cases where a bailment relationship does not exist and a hospitality operation does not assume liability, managers should still exercise a degree of care over their guest property to avoid the risk of a negligence lawsuit.